Yeah, pizza and frozen yogurt. So parents will have to wait till too long to see your kid. As soon as it gets ready, comes in and gets set. We can have as much anticipated content. Thank you very much for attending and supporting Foxboro.
morning, and thank you so much for coming out today on this very dreary, rainy Friday. My name is Miss Greenleaf, and this is the 5th grade beginner band. So we have all just started our instruments in September. I'm sure most of you know this, but I thought I'd just let you know. So in just 4 short months, we have actually learned a good amount about our instruments. So those last 3 songs we just played were all songs that only used 5 or less notes. So we started off right in September learning only 5 notes. We call them do, re, mi, fa, sol. And there's actually a bunch of songs you can play with just those 5. This song also uses only 5 notes, but it's a cool arrangement in which we can introduce you to the 3 different sections of the concert band. So in the concert band, we actually have 3 completely different types of instruments. One is a woodwind instrument like the clarinet, the saxophone, and the flute. One is a brass instrument like the trumpet, trombone, French horn, baritone. And the last is our percussion instrumentalist in the background playing some mallet instruments. You're going to have a chance to get introduced to every instrument in the band later when we do our instrument solos, but this piece is called Listen to Our Sections, and it goes back and forth between each group of instruments so you can kind of hear how each group sounds a little different. So this is Listen to Our Sections. I'm sure some of you, parents, grandparents out there, can remember maybe some of the strange sounds that come out of our instruments way back in September. And I think it's just fascinating, actually, which is why I always come back and love this grade to teach, that in 3 months they can go from splurps and squeaks and really unfortunate sounds to some really good sounds and songs. So it's very interesting, but we're trying to manipulate pieces of wood, plastic, and metal into creating sounds. It's a very unique thing. And it's really great for aspects of their learning, like fine motor skills. Reading music is like reading a new language. There's so much going on in here, and it's really fascinating to me that they can achieve so much in only so little of time. The next song we're going to play for you is our first duet. A duet is when we actually have 2 different lines of music going on at once. So everything we played so far was together. Everybody played the same notes, everybody played the same rhythms, and now we're actually going to play different notes. And this is called the London Bridge Duet. The coolest thing about this is they don't even know which line they're playing. I'm going to tell them right now. All right, here we go. Ready? Let's do A, B, A, B, trombones, A, B. Here we go. Don't forget the wrists. So basically what we're doing right now is I'm showing you the progression of what we've learned since the beginning of the year. So obviously we start off with songs like Mary Had a Little Lamb and Hot Cross Buns, and then we get a little bit more difficult. By now we have learned our 6th note of our scale in order to play London Bridge. And then luckily with only 6 notes we can play some of our favorite songs like Jingle Bells, believe it or not, is only a song that takes 6 notes. So the next 2 songs we'll play for you are 2 of our holiday songs. The first is Jingle Bells, and the second is My Dreidel. Because this is such a unique class, I would say it's very unique, it is important that we try our best to recognize that homework and practice are actually the same thing. It's very important at a beginning of an instrumentalist's life to really develop the correct muscle strength in order to play our instruments. Other than the percussionists, we're all working on actually strengthening our lip and mouth muscles, which I know seems very strange. But everybody in here basically has to manipulate their mouth and their airstream in order to produce sound. And that takes strength from our face. And if you think about it, we don't really work out our face muscles much. If you've ever laughed for too long and your face hurts, that's your muscles getting tired, right? So we're doing a lot of work up here with this. And the best thing we can do to help ourselves is play every day. If you imagine trying to, train for a marathon, you're certainly not going to only, run 2 days before the marathon. You're going to go specific. And that's what we're looking for here. Even if it's only 5 minutes a day, it's actually more worth it than 20 minutes on the weekend. 5 minutes a day will help build the muscles in order for them to be stronger and play higher and faster and louder. So I would encourage us as families to help our students do this by setting up a place for them to practice. Sometimes it's hard when you get home after work and soccer and homework, you don't want to take out your instrument and practice, but if the instrument's like right there and your music's right there, it's so much easier to just take it out and play for a bit. The other thing that would really be helpful is if you ask them to play for you. First of all, they get excited, and second of all, it's a good way for you to check, does it sound like a song? If it doesn't, they might need a little bit of extra help, which, by the way, is totally fine. This is a tough thing, and I have extra help on Mondays after school. Anyone can come any Monday, okay? So this next song we're going to play is actually a round. A round is a type of song in which the song begins, and then some other group of instruments start the same song a couple of measures later. This is very common if you ever heard like, row, row, row your boat, row, row, and we go on and on. That's a round. Our round is called Frere Jacques, and I hope you enjoy. One, two. Here we go. 1, 2. right. Our next song is actually one of our first what we call band arrangements. A band arrangement is when most of the players actually have different parts than their other friends on different instruments. So we're going to play Old MacDonald Had a Band. And just like our previous song, Listen to Our Sections, we have little different groups of solo instruments in the middle of the song. And I'd encourage you to try and listen way back to our trombone, baritone friends back here who are actually playing a completely different line than everybody else. So this is Old MacDonald Had a Band. Thank you. I think you can tell that's one of our faves. We love that one. And it is actually hard to wait and rest, especially when you know the song and you want to play all the parts. But hopefully you could see that we kind of switch back and forth, woodwinds, brass, and percussion again. So thank you very much. That was Old MacDonald. We're going to play one more song for you before we start our instrument solos. The instrument solos is a chance for you to really get to see your student. I know it's hard to see some students in the back, but they'll stand up for their instrument solo, so don't you worry. But we're going to play one more song for you. This is a unique song because instead of having 4 beats in our measure, which we've had from the beginning, we actually only have 3 beats in our measure. This is called the Mexican Clapping Song. It's a very popular children's dance, and it's kind of like Ring Around the Rosie, but in their culture, where they actually dance around and clap. So this is the Mexican Clapping Song. Okay. The next part of the concert, we're going to actually introduce you to each individual instrument, starting from our highest pitch instrument to our lowest pitch instrument. So first, I'd like to introduce you to the flute players. Go ahead, flutes, stand up. All right, if they held up the flute and you had to guess, what material do you think it's made out of? Metal. Okay, this is an interesting fact because the flute is actually considered a woodwind instrument. It is kind of weird because there's absolutely no wood on that instrument at all, but back in the old days when they first invented the flute was made out of wood. It was very common all the way up until basically we started to really manipulate metal, around that time. And they started creating metal flutes because they were louder and they were more durable. So if you could think about it, wood can crack, get wet, it can get destroyed. But metal is pretty chill. And it's very loud, which is great for the flute. It's a very soft instrument. It is the highest highest speaking instrument in the band because it's the smallest instrument. The smaller the instruments, the higher. The bigger the instruments, the lower. The flute is a very pretty sounding instrument. It's used often to depict like when you wake up in the morning, or birds chirping, or lullabies, and it makes perfect sense for our flute players to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for you. Here we go, ready? Excellent job, flutes. Thank you. One other thing about the flute that I think is very interesting, personally, is that if you look at the mouthpiece, it's the only instrument that actually does not go in your mouth. Right? So the clarinet mouthpiece goes in the mouth, the brass mouthpiece goes right on top of the mouth, but the flute mouthpiece goes under your mouth. Will you put your flutes up just for a second? Just like put it up like you're playing. Cool. And if you look at it, it's actually below their lip. If you've ever like tried to blow air across like one of those glass bottles and get like a hooting sound, that's actually exactly how the flute works. And the weird thing is half of their air actually doesn't even go in the instrument. So the flute takes almost as much air as the biggest tuba in the band, surprisingly, even though it's the smallest instrument. So very nice job, flutes. The next instrument in the band is the clarinets. Go ahead, clarinets. All right. The clarinet is a woodwind instrument, and professional clarinets are often made out of wood. These clarinets are generally made out of plastic, again, a little bit more durable. You don't have to worry about it cracking or getting damaged. But believe it or not, it's mostly made out of wood. And the other thing that makes them a woodwind instrument is actually the reed. You guys turn your clarinets around, show them the reed. In order to create sound on the clarinet, there's this piece of wood. It's a very thin piece of wood in which it vibrates when you push air through it. And that's actually what makes the sound. So a reed is actually very important to getting a good sound on the clarinet or the saxophone, which we'll get to in a minute. I always say to my students, broken reed, broken sound. And we do have reeds here. If you find you've broken them, you can always let me know. We can get some for you. Okay? The clarinet is a very unique instrument. It's got a ton of buttons. Show them the buttons. Tons of buttons, including like 4 pinky keys each, which is very weird, which creates like a little bit of fingery problems. But luckily, it's a beautiful instrument. And it's a very popular instrument in compositions. I'm a clarinet player, and I actually started the clarinet in 5th grade right here at the Ahern Middle School. So for me, it's very exciting to see, kids keep going on in music. So the clarinets are going to play a song for you called Camptown Races. Is almost the same length as the flute, but it's actually like a ½ inch to an inch longer, so it can play a little bit lower than the flute, but can actually play just as high as the flute players can. The next woodwind instrument and the last woodwind instrument of our band is the saxophones. The cool thing about the saxophone, I like to call it the chameleon of the band. If you look at it, it looks more like a trumpet than it does like a clarinet. And the reason is it's actually made out of the same material as a trumpet, trombone, baritone. But it has a reed, go ahead and show them the reed, just like the clarinet. So the saxophone is actually the youngest instrument in this band. It was only invented in the late 1800s, whereas the flute's been around since the 1400s. And it is kind of a cool hybrid instrument between clarinet and a brass instrument. So the saxophone can play a little bit louder than the clarinet because they're made out of brass, but can play a lot of the fast notes, just like the clarinet because of all the keys, right? Go ahead, show them all the keys on the instrument. The saxophone and the clarinet have the most keys of any of the instruments here, okay? The saxophone is a very popular instrument in jazz and even in rock and roll nowadays. There's very commonly a saxophone in the background of some of the most popular music today. And the saxophones are going to play for you Doodle All Day. 1, 2, 3. Saxophones. The saxophone is actually too heavy to hold up with just your hands, which is why saxophones are one of the only instruments that actually uses a neck strap. The weight of the instrument actually sits on your neck, which allows your fingers to be free to move at whatever speed necessary. Thanks, saxophones. All right, we're going to move on to the brass section now, starting with, in my opinion, the prettiest of all the brass instruments, the French horns. So go ahead and stand up, French horns, and show them that beautiful instrument. Oh, it's just beautiful. Yeah, I know. The French horn is like one of those common instruments to be shown actually in like holiday decorations and things like that. It's just very twirly and beautiful. Believe it or not, if we could unwound the French horn, it would actually stretch like very far across the room, but they keep winding and winding and winding it so that you can actually hold it in one hand. The French horn is a middle speaking instrument. It can speak high and it can speak low, but it's probably the most popular instrument in the famous movie music themes like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and it's actually the instrument that plays the Star Wars theme. So the French horn is very popular in the composition of John Williams, who's a famous movie music composer. So you can check him out. The French horn is actually quite difficult. It's got a very small mouthpiece. Can you guys take off your mouthpiece and show them? It's actually smaller than the trumpet and smaller than the tuba and the trombone, and therefore it takes very detailed playing from just the front of your lips, which is kind of strange, but it's just a beautiful toned instrument. It has like a nice warm sound. So the French horns are going to play for you Au clair de la lune. Yeah, the French horn is also a unique instrument. I don't know if you could tell from where you were sitting, but the bell of the instrument actually faces behind them, which is kind of a strange invention process in my opinion, but they also actually take their left hand or right hand and put it inside the bell to help hold the instruments. That's very strange and very unique to the French horn. The French horn's an old instrument, though. It's been around for hundreds of years. And to me, it's like a perfect sound for like a caroling or something like that, French horns. Very warm sound. Thank you, French horns. The next brass instrument we're going to show you is the trumpet. Go ahead, trumpets. The trumpet is a very popular instrument in this band. We actually have almost 40 trumpets. And it is probably the highest speaking brass instrument. So the trumpet actually can speak very high, but it's actually very hard to do so. It takes a lot of lip and air strength to do it. The trumpet actually only has 3 buttons, which means in order to play more than 3 notes, we have to use our face to control the instrument, which is why what I was saying earlier with the muscle workout is very important for brass instruments in particular. The instrument also goes right in front of your face, and it is a very forward-speaking instrument, so it can be quite loud. And it's really common in marching bands because it produces a lot of sound, but can also be found in very old classical and Baroque style music. So the trumpet's been around for a while. They say they found instruments close to the trumpet and actually in the Egyptian tombs, which is very interesting. So the trumpets are going to play for you Skip to My Lou. And the baritones, go ahead, stand up, guys. They're in our back row here because they're the lowest speaking instruments, not because we don't love them. And they also are the biggest instruments of the band, so therefore they need a little bit more space. As you can see up here, we're pretty squished. Okay? All right, so the trumpet and the baritone are 2 very similar instruments, but controlled 2 totally different ways. So we'll start with the baritone over here. So guys, hold up your baritones. The baritone is an in-between instrument between a tuba and a trombone. It has 3 buttons, just like the trumpet does, and it has the same style of playing like the trumpet, but the mouthpiece is the same size as the trombone, and the notes are the same as the trombone. It's a cool instrument, especially if students are interested in trying the big tuba once they grow a little bit and actually can play the big tuba. Or it's actually a very popular instrument in solo band music up at the high school. So the baritone is actually very popular and an important instrument in the band. Because it has buttons, it's a little easier to play faster. Unlike the trombone, guys, show them the trombone. And the trombone is the only instrument in the band that does not have buttons. Instead, it has what we call a slide. Go ahead. Okay, the slide is the coolest thing on the trombone for sure, but also can be quite difficult because it's not as if you can just go like this and have the right fingering. So there are specific spots on our slide we stop our hands to try to produce the right sound. But of course, the reason you play your trombone is to go like this. Yeah, of course, right? Why wouldn't you want to do that? So anyway, the trombone and the baritone are the same shaped mouthpiece as the trumpet, but bigger. Okay, so they're going to play for you Down by the Station. One, two, ready. Nice, good job. All right, our last section of the band, who have been waiting so patiently back there, is our percussion section. Thank you. So percussion is a very unique group of instrumentalists in the band, in which they actually generally play multiple types of instruments. This might include mallet instruments, which is what they're playing on right now, bell, xylophone, marimba. But in the second half of the year and beyond, we start to learn a little bit about drumming and auxiliary percussion, like instruments like the triangle or the guiro or the shaker and things like that. For now, we're all playing mallet instruments to learn a little bit about note reading and melodies and stuff like that. And then next concert, if you stick around, hopefully you'll hear a little bit of the drums and percussion added to our band. So it's hard to see, but they're all actually using two different mallets. Go ahead and hold up your mallets again. The mallets belong in each hand, which means we have to play our left and our right hand at the same style in the same way. And that's often difficult because some people are right-handed, some people are left-handed. You cannot see their instruments, but their instrument is really set up just like a piano, but they're made out of metal bars, so when you hit the bars, they make pretty ringing noises in pitch, just like a piano would. They're going to play one of my favorite songs, actually. This is called Morning from the Peer Gynt Suite. It's a very common song to be heard in some breakfast commercials, actually. But it's an old and very pretty song. So this is Morning. Thing about playing mallet instruments is that you have to look at your instrument and the music at the same time, right? So we actually practice a lot of reading and playing without looking down, which is pretty tricky. So thanks very much. All right, we've only got a few more songs for you, so I'm going to keep it moving. We've got a couple of holiday songs, and then we'll finish off with one of our favorite songs of all time. So first we're going to play for you Jolly Old St. Nicholas, and then we'll do Up on a Housetop. All right? Jolly Old St. Nick is another duet. So we're going to have two different parts going on at once, which creates a very pretty harmony line that works well with this song. So this is Jolly Old St. Nick. So do the parts we did when we rehearsed earlier today. All right, here we go. As you can kind of hear, our songs are starting to get a little faster, right? We're playing some more notes in a quicker speed. We're also learning some different things about reading music. So those two songs actually had multiple repeats with first and second endings, which is a whole different style of reading music. So that's pretty tricky as well. And our second to last song for you is a famous song called Ode to Joy. It became famous when the composer Beethoven put it in his 9th symphony. It's a very popular song. You've probably heard it before. It's actually a song. It was sung by a choir, written in German. But we're going to play another band arrangement, so different parts from different players on Ode to Joy. And this is our song we would like to dedicate to you guys for all of your support and help. We know that it's not just about us, but it's about help and love and support from our friends and families. So thank you very much. And this is our way of saying we hope you have a joyful holiday break and season. Thank you very much. All right, we only have one more song for you. We've saved our most favorite for last. And before we do that, though, I'd just like to thank you again for taking time out to come and see our concert. I know it's not the most ideal time for many of us. And before I go, I must say a big thank you to my assistant director. As you can tell, there's a lot of students in this class. There's actually almost 140 of them. So as one teacher, it's a little much. And thank goodness I have my coworker and friend, Donald Albro, back there on the drum set, who's a very important member of our group. Mr. Albro spends all of our rehearsals with us, kind of traveling around and helping the students. So we really appreciate his help. And he's going to help us out right now by playing some drum set for our last song called Hard Rock Blues. I'd just like to remind you to try and exit out the back way so our 5th graders can go right out this way. They got to get to lunch just on time. And we hope you have an amazing holiday break. And I hope to see you on our next concert, which is Bandorama. And don't you worry, it's in the gym, so it's a really good time to take photos and stuff like that. So that'll be in March, so I hope to see you there. Ready? Hard Rock Blues.